And in Somalia, devastating car bombings over the weekend. Somalia's president says at least 100 people died and more than 300 were injured. Extremist group Al-Shabab has claimed responsibility for the attack. Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed said the country is at war with Al-Shabab. Officials from nearby Eritrea condemned the attack and expressed solidarity with the people and the government of Somalia. But many Somalis say the attacks are becoming too frequent. In August, about 24 people were killed and more than 100 injured after Al-Shabaab militants stormed into a hotel in the country's capital. We'll speak with a Somali political analyst who says the people are frustrated with President Hassan's government. Now we are focusing on Somalia. Somalia, as you guys just heard there and may have been following, has been going through a lot. Al-Shabaab has seemed to be back at play after being dormant for some time and having been pushed off largely to parts of the rural south of Somalia, but now it is making its way. The group is making their way to the capital city of Mogadishu. This last time was over the weekend with these bombings. Before that was in August, where a hotel was barged into by Al-Shabaab militants, and about 24 people died, over 100 injured. So why is this happening, and what is going on? To talk about that, joining me today is Sheikh Abdi Hersy. Sheikh, thank you so much for making the time. Really looking forward to this conversation.
My pleasure, Hermela. My pleasure.
Thank you. So first of all, what was it like for you and others in the Somali community to see that devastating car bombing attack that happened in Mogadishu?
It was hurting, heartbreaking. People are dying. Many got injured, and a lot of properties were damaged. It was huge, pre-planned, real big attack on Mogadishu, and everyone is really devastated on the facts on the ground.
And so what is going on? We know President Farmajo, or former President Farmajo, which was a very popular president. He came in at a time where Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was there in the transition in Ethiopia. President Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea and Farmajo had a little bit of a trio partnership. And then, all of a sudden, I believe it was in May or so, late May or June, correct me if I'm wrong, there was this new president that was voted in by parliament, President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, who was around during some of the era of the TPLF years in Ethiopia. And there was a sense that this was a way for the West to have control again. What is the Somali perspective on why these attacks are increasing?
One thing to note in the election, definitely the West are excited with the new president. It's not because he is part of them. It's not because he's not Somali. It's because he is very weak when it comes to pushing back the Western pressures. He is someone who is really weak for the foreign interference and foreign pressures. So I was told by a worker, employee of the UNSOM leader, James Swan, a worker, told us he jumped up and down when Farmajo lost the election. So for some reason, everybody from the West was angry on Farmajo, and he was the most hated president towards the Westerns, and especially the US and UK and those others, because let me just take you back a little bit before Farmajo was voted in. UN or international community were called as number 6 tribe of Somalia. Somalia has been divided in 5 parts, 4 major tribes and 0.5, which is the small tribes, the less population or less number tribes. So it's called 4.5. So there are five groups. So this other group, which is the international community, were called among Somalis the sixth tribe of Somalia. And they happen to be more powerful than all the five others. They used to do whatever they want in Somalia. Let me remind the audience that one time they changed the entire government structure by allowing someone who was the president before Hassan Sheikh Mohamud's first term. His name is Sharif. They allowed him to bring 275 members of the parliament from his own pocket. So to add to the already existing 275 to make it 550 so he can compete with anyone who wants to compete with him. How can you compete with somebody who has 50% of the votes already? And those people were MPs for the Somalis, elected and selected and brought into the parliament by the sixth tribe or the international community. When Farmajo came in, they were up to that level. So Farmajo was became the prime minister for that government, that specific one, for Sharif. In 6 months, he changed the attitude of dealing with the international community, and he was booted out by the UN, the sixth group, which was, I told you, more powerful than the other five, in all combined. So what happened is he tried to run for election. A second time he won. When he won, he tried to reorganize the country to change the policy of being puppetry to the West. And he started making the solutions for Somalia by Somalis. That was his attitude, and also African solution is for African problems. And he tried to talk and communicate with the neighboring countries, namely Ethiopia and Eritrea, whom welcome him and welcome the effort of becoming kind of the trio that you mentioned. In his first year, the UN could not accept the change, the policy change. This man was with a new policy, with new vision to change from this way to that way, and they could not take it. So the representative of the UN at the time, Heysem, tried to interfere the local affairs of Somalia. He was in first time PNG'd by the former president Farmajo. That was the first time that a person in that level, who's supposed to be more powerful than the president, was kicked out of the country in the order of the president. And the president did not even have the support of the politicians and the elites, including his own prime minister. But he adamantly took that decision, and it was decisive. I know you are informed when the UN Secretary General Gutierrez tweeted that he spoke with Farmajo twice in 3 days, asking him to change his mind. And the answer was, forget about that. Let's move on. Bring someone else. So he, by doing that, taking that decision, he took them out of the business of the Somali politics. They became unemployed in that area. Now they all became angry at him, and they ganged upon him, and they were fueling all those furious, attempts of, they call him dictator, they call him whatever names they can call him through their puppets. So this election was mainly on Farmajo, between Farmajo and the, let me say, international community, and they won. So that is the case. Why the security is getting worse? The person who is supposed to be responsible for the security of Somalia is accused of being part of Al-Shabab. This is what we have. Former Al-Shabab leaders. 2 days ago, there was the same day that the car bombing was going on, same day that people were butchered. there was a big event in Mogadishu where all the leaders attended, including the president and the vice president. A man who is called Ahmed Madobe, who is in charge of Jubaland state of Somalia, a president of Jubaland state of Somalia, stood in front of the public, and he bragged that he was one of the founders of Al-Shabab. And a sitting minister, was in jail when Farmajo was president. And that sitting minister was former Al-Shabab, and he tried to become the president of the southwest region of Somalia, and he was arrested. And that was the one who instigated the problem between Somalia, Farmajo, and the former UN security, UN representative, and US SRGR. Mm-hmm. So they were bragging that they were the founders of Al-Shabaab. So when you have a government accused, or government officials accused of being Al-Shabaab, being in charge of the security, this is what will happen. Exactly what you mentioned, among the incidents that you mentioned, was that one in August. It was crazy. That one was completely, what do they call, a failure, total failure of the government. What happened? Before this government, there was a protocol to follow to deal with insurgents when they take hostage of, or when they siege a place like hotel. There was a protocol. That protocol was undermined. The security forces trained to deal with that were taken out of the hotel, and unprofessional group were brought forward. And at that time of evacuation, and when they were taking away the police forces trained to deal with these insurgents when they take hostage of the hotels like this, the time they took out and evacuated the area, Al-Shabaab individuals, 15 of them, left the building safely. None of them were injured. None of them were killed. No trace of the Al-Shabaab members did this to Somalia were found, because the guy who evacuated the area, who tell the police forces to get out of the hotel, who refused the protocol to be followed, formal protocol to be followed, is the one who is accused of being Al-Shabaab. So we are in deep trouble, and we're expecting these kind of things to happen more and more. It is just sad, and that's what it is.
What, if anything, do you think, or what role, if anything, do you think the U.S. is playing in strengthening Al-Shabaab or weakening the security apparatus system? And if it's not about them actually doing something to make that happen, you've talked about these ministers that are within government that are Al-Shabaab members. What use are these attacks for the West? Does it serve their agenda, somehow? We've talked about how keeping the people divided, insecurity often allows the U.S. And the other foreign powers in these regions to take more control. So what is the perspective of the Somali people when it comes to the West right now?
I was just reading, when I was waiting for you guys, I was reading a tweet from Kate Foster, the ambassador of the UK to Somalia. And I read the comments. I read about 50 comments. She said it was excellent that Security Council extended its mandate in Somalia today, extended their mandate in Somalia to next year, October next year, 1 year. And she said it was excellent. So I read the comments. I could not find one single comment praising what she said was excellent. That means the attitude, understanding, the perception of the public in Somalia is the West is responsible for everything going on wrong in Somalia. That's the perception. I don't want to accuse the U.S. specifically supporting the Al-Shabaab. I'm not going to accuse them or accuse anyone, because these things are behind the scene. And unless you have, concrete evidence, it's not right to accuse anybody. However, this is the feeling of the Somali people. They feel they are the problem. We have 24,000 troops, 24,000 people in Somalia, foreign troops, doing nothing to help the Somalis, civilians, to fight against Al-Shabab. Our army is well trained. They don't have the equipment they need because there is a arms embargo. They claim, Security Council claim that they care about Somalia and they want Somalis to be safe and the security to be enhanced and to become better. However, the security forces cannot buy weapons unless they go through the Security Council. So I don't know what to do, but the West, the perception of the people, including myself, is that West and foreign troops are fueling the insecurity in Somalia. They
So
are fueling.
a follow-up to that, Sheikh, there was a time that we were all working very closely with the No More movement. And like I said, you've had these three leaders that are well liked by their constituents in the Horn of Africa. There was a lot of hope, even though the Ethiopia continues to remain in conflict. And, at the time, Somalia appeared to be pretty stable. And then President HSM, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed comes in. At the same time, the deployment of hundreds of U.S. troops are announced, and we find out they were already there. It's just the announcement came. So you have this new president that's actually an old president. You've a popular one out. You've got hundreds of U.S. troops in that region, and logic would say if you have this elite force, let's assume the U.S. is a powerful country. It has the ability to train people and soldiers at the top-notch level, and it has hundreds more in that region. So, and at that time, Al-Shabab seemed to have been weakened and were not attacking. Certainly not in the capital city. So, looking at those things, I would think the security would get better if the U.S. was in fact there with their troops for good. So what's the feeling about the number of U.S. troops that have increased that are in that region and how that's affecting the security?
There is no single person in Somalia, as far as I know, that welcomes the presence of the U.S. in Somalia. Historically, America never solved any war or a conflict in any country at all. Afghanistan was the last. They invested all they had into Afghanistan, and they brought all the troops possible in Afghanistan. But because nobody believed in them, everybody was feeling they are the enemy. Nothing worked for them. It's exactly the same. Their presence in Somalia is fueling the insecurity itself alone. Unless, let alone, I'm not, accusing them of being completely in bed with Al-Shabab. However, their presence itself is fueling the insecurity in Somalia because Al-Shabab will have legitimacy or legitimate argument that enemy is in our country and they want to take our country, and we are here as a freedom fighters, just like TPLF. By the way, it was amazing discussion between you and the professor. I was listening and I was glued into it. He was really well versed into that issue. TPLF is not an Ethiopian problem. TPLF is East African problem, if not more than that. They are representative of the Western ideology and imperialism in the region. They killed over 100,000 in 27 years that they were in power, and they want to force people. In Somalia, we're afraid of TPLF to come back. The war that you are fighting with TPLF is not a war for Ethiopia, it's war for the whole region. We Somalis appreciate Abiy Ahmed's decisive position against TPLF. TPLF are the founders of Al-Shabab. TPLF are the ones who gave the first $1 million, the former Al-Shabab killed by the drone, Ahmed Godane, the first $1 million that he started operating in Somalia was given by TPLF in Togwa Jale, the area between Somalia and Somali region and Somalia. So the reason why, it's exactly the feeling of Ethiopians and no more movement and all those on the ground in Ethiopia. The same feeling exists in Somalia about Al-Shabaab, about the TPLF, about the West. We believe West is not there for our own good. And now they're extending their mandate. That means Somalia is under a colony. Somalia is owned and run and ruled by Security Council. Why? We have a government. Why don't you lift the embargo and allow the government to arm its security? Why don't you support, if America wants to liberate Somalia, if there is a will, there is a way. They can do it. Al-Shabaab is a small group of retards that is a foreign project. It was said by that same exact person that I'm talking about, Ahmed Madobe, who was the founder of Al-Shabaab and second in line at the time, said this is a foreign project. He said it's a foreign project. And the foreign, it could be anyone, but Somalis don't like the West. Somalis don't believe the West. American troops in Somalia can destroy, there are some accusations that sometimes helicopters come above the Al-Shabaab region controlled areas and drop money and weapons and all that stuff for them. It's easy to dismantle this group, but I don't believe America is really truthfully planning to do that.
Yeah, it's that you just have to take the results into consideration, right? Regardless of whether they say their intention is to make things better. So, what should we make of HSM? We'll wrap with that question. Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, how much control does he have in all of this?
As I said at the beginning, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed is supposed to be the most experienced president because he used to be a president before. He finished one mandate that was 5 years almost, and now he's back. He's supposed to be the one who knows how, who knows the gaps, who knows how to deal with the foreign people. He should just follow the footsteps of the former president, his predecessor, in dealing with the Westerns. There is a mandate called AMISOM. When they came to our country, 20 years ago, they said they're going to be there 1 year, African Union troops, or that you become AMISOM later, and then stay there forever. 24,000 troops. Each one is getting $1,500 a month and doing nothing, just enjoying and dancing and drinking alcohol everywhere. That's all they do. So this president supposed to be someone who knows all that because he's been there, and someone who is willing to change that. And he was given a framework easier than the one that he had before. Now he had the Western is taken out of our politics, contained into their isolation. He should just continue acting and exercising as a powerful president. But unfortunately, this man is so weak when it comes to foreign troops. And that is what makes me really feel bad and feel that we went back into the dark hole again. And 4 dark years are ahead of us. I always advise him, and I'm advising him, if he can listen to me right now, to change that. He was given a framework, easy to handle. The Westerns, easy, because they know he can be in. Now he knows you can PNG the top person of the UN if they don't
what's PNG,
follow the mandate.
What is
persona non grata?
Ah, got it.
It's
Persona non grata.
persona non grata.
It's basically
Yeah, you can kick them out. You can, yes, you can throw them away from your country. You are independent country, and you have a flag, and you are our independence and sovereignty is not in question. So he has that power. He's supposed to be, practicing. And I really miss the trio that you mentioned. It was a hope for the entire region. It was a hope for the Somali people specifically. We have the longest seashore, and Ethiopia is 110 million people. We can have a beautiful relationship with Ethiopians, trade relationship, where they can use all our, sea empty. We have a lot of empty ports in Somalia. So we can create the biggest and a giant business and giant economy if we collaborate these three countries. And even if we can, widen the tent and include Kenya and Djibouti, we can do whatever we want. And we don't need foreign intervention. We don't need Western presence in Somalia. We don't need Western army or navy or US in particular in our country. They never did good for any of the past. And we're not expecting them. They're there for their own interest. They're not there for our own interest. They're not there for advancing Somali security or Somalia's well-being. They're there to do their own things. And by the presence of those troops, Somalis across the board believe that they are looting our resources. There are over 1,500 ships illegally fishing in our seas. And they are there. There was something called Operation Atlanta that was really bad. And former president, run by EU, the former president kicked them out. And their mandate was ended in February this year. Now there is a discussion that Hassan Sheikh Mohamud will extend them. There is a discussion that Hassan Sheikh Mohamud will extend the presence of these foreign troops in Somalia after the 2 years mandate given last Security Council meeting, which is ending next year. There is a lot of hope. Is a lot of hope that we had vanished. Now we are in feeling sad and down, and God is always great. We hope marvelous things and something miracles will happen for us. I hope and I pray to God that he finds himself in a good position, better position, where he can enrich and strengthen the relationship between him and Ethiopia and Eritrea, and also Kenya. The person that he liked in Kenya is being defeated. So I hope he's not isolated, and now he was even big in fight with Ethiopia unnecessarily.
So HSM, sorry, liked it's actually Raila Odinga. Kenyatta is the former
yes.
Kenyan president. So Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud is wanted Raila Odinga to win over William Ruto in Kenya.
Yes, and
wow, that is very telling. That's telling.
Yes, he wanted him to win, and it did not work. And he signed agreements with him, with the former president before the election 3 weeks. And we were advising him not to sign anything with this guy because he's going to lose the election. A new guy will come. But he didn't heed our advices and our wisdom. But now I'm hoping that Ruto is not going to take that into account and become the enemy of Somalia. I hope he, understands they understand with each other and they develop a good relationship. That's what I hope. But it's not something that you expect. If you want me to fall and I don't, you're not expecting me to be your friend. So that's what it is. That's the situation down there. Abiy Ahmed was not happy with the way he was dealing with Egypt and EU. And all those Westerns. He was not happy with it, and it took like good 3-4 months to meet with each other. I hope they.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope so too. I mean, it's interesting because Raila Odinga, who lost the presidential elections in Kenya, you know, we've talked to Karanjik Ashesha, who's a Kenyan American journalist, who said that Odinga is very much, you know, Western leaning. And there's actually a speech that Odinga made where he's saying, stop comparing Kenya to these other lesser countries like Ethiopia and Somalia. So it was very clear, I think, sort of where he stood. It was, you know, still somewhat of a close election, but however, William Ruto did become the Kenyan president at the end of the day. And you know, I do see, at least on the surface, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia being sort of a uniter among the leadership. We recently saw the Sudanese president coming to Ethiopia and getting a warm reception, and we saw a lot of PR friendly pictures between Abiy Ahmed and the president there, even though Sudan is accused of supporting the TPLF rebels to some degree. Nonetheless, we do hope there is a rejiggering of the relationships between the leaders in the Horn. It seems like HSM is sort of the odd one out, and hopefully he finds a way to work with the neighboring countries' leaders. Before we wrap, Sheikh Hersy, how can we support the Somali people? I mean, there's a lot of Ethiopians and Eritreans in the audience, and you know, in what way can they be a voice for the Somali people?
They can support in different ways, in many ways. Advocacy, rejecting the U.S. There are a lot of bills going on, and No More movement was really a good movement for the entire Africa, especially in Horn of Africa. So I hope Ethiopians and Eritreans will continue supporting their counterparts in Somalia. We are many, we're the majority. Somalis are really hoping that there will be a one man, one vote, which I really doubt that this president will realize that, because if that happens, Farmajo will be the president the next day. And there is no such a feeling that they will do it. And I also hope that our relationship with the three countries, our old relationship continues. Eritrea helped Somalia a lot. They trained 5,000 troops of Somalia, and they are still stuck there. They can't come back. I don't know. I heard 2 days ago, I was told that 50% of the logistics to transport them from Eritrea to Somalia is offered by Afwerki. President Isaias Afwerki is a true Somali friend. He is a friend to the Somali people. He did a lot for them, and I really appreciate and admire. So they can help. Advocacy, fake news, you know, is out there. You know it. You know what I'm talking about. You are part of it. You are hero for the region. I really admire you and your work. And you should be all Ethiopians. If they want to support Somalia, they should support Hermela. Let me say that.
Thank you, Sheikh Hersy. You know, that really means a lot. You know how appreciative I am of your perspective, and you being able to come on, you know, when I request that you come on and help us understand Somalia. That region is absolutely interconnected. And, you know, I did notice, to your point about Eritrea, I did notice Eritrea was one of the only countries, I can't say the only, but one of the only countries that actually expressed condolences to the people of Somalia. And I think in particular to somebody in government who had lost someone, and expressed their solidarity with the government of Somalia and the people. So, and I also, on a much less serious note, I've never forgotten about your point about the fish in Somalia being particularly good. So, hopefully, we get peace in that region sooner than later, inshallah, so
Yeah,
that that region can actually use the gifts that it has been given, by its land and the nature of being exactly where it is. So Sheikh Hersy, thank you so much. I know it's a little late where you are, but really appreciate your time and insight.
I do really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.